Okay, let's unpack this immediately because the concept we're diving into here today, it fundamentally challenges the very first sentence of cosmology. We're dealing with a provocative hook right here in the source material that's crystal clear. The universe is not an explosion. It is a projection.
It's the ultimate replacement theory. We are looking at a single, self-consistent cosmological framework designed to entirely replace the major patches and mysteries of modern physics,
Hmm.
specifically the Big Bang singularity, cosmic inflation, and the entire dark matter, and dark energy.
And that's our mission for this deep dive, to explore this comprehensive framework, which they call the five-dimensional flow. We need to understand the source material that describes this higher dimensional architecture and, most importantly, identify the key testable predictions. This isn't just metaphysical philosophy, right? This is a serious hypothesis that sticks its neck out.
It absolutely does. And the easiest, most digestible way for you to approach this is through the core metaphor they establish right at the start. The fifth dimension is the sea, and our familiar 4D spacetime is the current.
It's a powerful image. Okay, so let's define the sea first. If this fifth dimension is the source of everything, what is it? What's it made of?
So the sources define the fifth dimension as a timeless, infinite sea of potentiality. It's composed of what they call S energy. The S is for substrate. This sea exists in a state of informational saturation.
Informational saturation, what does that actually mean?
It means all possible information, all complexity is simultaneously present. And crucially, this 5DC has two absolutes. Absolute zero temperature and zero entropy. It's perfectly stable, perfectly poised.
Absolute zero entropy. That's the key, isn't it? Because our universe is defined by increasing entropy, the passage of time. So if the 5D is this infinite sea, our 4D universe isn't something separate from it floating, above it or something.
No, absolutely not. The sources are very clear about this. They emphasize a monistic topology. Monism just means unity. Our 4D space-time continuum isn't a separate reality. It's a dynamic current flowing within that 5DC.
Oh, interesting.
It's sourced and sustained by the 5D ocean itself. Think of like a vortex or a river running inside a massive, still body of water. We are literally made of the sea.
So to make sure I've got that distinction for you, the listener, we're not floating above the 5D substrate. We are a specialized flowing region of it. If we're a current, then the fundamental laws of physics must be the rules for how that current behaves.
Precisely. The laws of physics we observe are formalized in this model as the projection codex. It's the rule set, the immutable code that translates the timeless, informationally saturated 5D potential into our sequential, finite 4D experience.
And if the universe is a current, a flow, that must be where time comes from, the sensation of duration itself.
Yes. Time is described not as a fundamental dimension, but as an artifact, the sensation of this current's flow. It's driven by an entropic gradient moving from the infinite, timeless potential of the 5DC toward the manifest sequence in the 4D current. The flow is what gives us the arrow of time.
That is profound. Okay, let's take these flow mechanics and apply them to the biggest problem in cosmology, the beginning. The standard model gives us the Big Bang, which starts with a singularity, an infinitely dense hot point where all our known physics just breaks down.
And it's a huge problem. That singularity is mathematically unavoidable in the standard model, but it's physically nonsensical. It's the point where we have to stop asking what happened before. And to fix the problems that come out of it, like the horizon and flatness problems, we had to invent cosmic inflation. It works, but it feels like an ad hoc patch.
Right, so this framework replaces all of that with a logical necessity based on geometry. And this is where it gets really interesting. How does the source use geometry to argue against a hot singular start?
The argument is about tiling. It suggests that a perfectly uniform geometric 3D state at time TOD is S, while it's impossible to achieve. If you try to build 3D space from the simplest solid shapes, let's say regular tetrahedrons, they can't tile space perfectly. They always leave tiny, unavoidable gaps.
Like trying to build a perfectly solid wall using only footballs. You're always going to have those little spaces in between.
Exactly that. So since 3D space must contain these inherent geometric errors, the origin of our space can't have been a purely 3D phenomenon. Therefore, the origin must be a non-geometric state in a higher dimension, which is the 5DC.
And because that source, the 5DC, is at absolute zero temperature and zero entropy, our universe begins not with an infinitely hot explosion, but with a cold start.
A cold, highly uniform projection, and this cold start dictates a completely different path for structure formation. Instead of the standard bottom-up model where tiny quantum fluctuations slowly build up, Structure here forms from the top down.
Top down. That sounds counterintuitive. It implies the biggest things were there first. How do those little tiling imperfections lead to something like the Laniakea supercluster?
Those unavoidable geometric gaps we mentioned, they're not random quantum noise. They are the seeds. They are predetermined gravitational depressions in the 4D current. These geometric gaps naturally become the collection points for mass.
So the superclusters, the vast cosmic webs, are the oldest foundational structures. They form first and act as scaffolding for the smaller galaxies that come later.
Precisely. They're the initial macrostructures that collapse. Now, think about the cosmic microwave background, the CMB. In the standard model, it's the leftover heat from the Big Bang. If our universe started cold, where does the CMB come from?
Right, that's the big question. If it started cold, that background glow shouldn't be there.
The sources explain that the CMB doesn't come from the origin. It comes much, much later. It's produced as a diffuse glow from the intense virial heating generated by these huge initial structures collapsing. The universe starts cold and only heats up when these massive superclusters begin to form, producing that pervasive 2.7 Kelvin glow.
Wow, that completely flips the timeline. The CMB becomes evidence of large-scale structure formation, not the initial event itself. It's warming up as it goes, not cooling down from a starting spike.
And this unified approach immediately provides a holistic explanation for the greatest cosmic mysteries. The dark sector, 95% of reality.
Okay, let's tackle the dark side. Dark matter and dark energy. This framework claims they are two necessary components of a single-dimensional flow. Two sides of the same coin.
What's fascinating here is the complete dismissal of the particle hunt. Dark matter is not a particle we need to search for. No WIMPs, no axions. The sources define it as S-matter, a non-baryonic form of S-energy that projects pure gravitational curvature.
So we've spent decades searching for a particle that might not even exist. In this model, it's an effect of the projection. If it's pure curvature, how does it behave?
It acts as a stable, persistent cosmic scaffolding. Because it's pure curvature projected from S-energy, it naturally accumulates in galaxy halos where mass is condensing. It bends light and dictates galactic rotation curves exactly as we observe, but without needing any exotic particles.
That makes so much sense of why it only seems to interact gravitationally. But what about dark energy? The force driving accelerated expansion. If dark matter is the structure, what's dark energy?
The source calls this the hydraulic effect. This is the constant, subtle net inflow or permeation of S-energy from the 5D sea into our 4D current.
A hydraulic effect. That's a powerful visual.
Yeah.
But wait, doesn't the idea of energy spontaneously appearing in our space violate conservation of energy?
Ah, that's the critical distinction. Conservation of energy holds true for the entire 5D system, but because our 4D universe is a current being sourced by an infinite 5D sea, it appears in our domain as a spontaneous, low-level infusion of new potential. We're perpetually being inflated by the source.
And where does this inflow happen?
Mostly in the cosmic voids, the vast empty spaces between galaxies. This is where the 4D current boundary is thinnest and most permeable. The inflow of new S-energy presses on spacetime, causing the voids to stretch, and that stretching is exactly what we observe as cosmic acceleration.
And the sources even give a specific number for this, a required rate of inflow. Something like 4.3 times 10 to the minus 44 kilograms per cubic meter per second. That number is so small, it's almost meaningless.
Yeah.
How critical is that specificity?
It's incredibly critical. It shows this is a physics model capable of quantitative testing, not just a nice metaphor. If that rate were any different, our expansion wouldn't match the supernova data. It's a tiny but relentless addition of mass energy into every bit of empty space.
So if the 5D is flowing in through the voids, to complete the circuit, there must be points where the 4D is flowing out.
Correct. And those points are black holes. They're redefined as resolution points. They solve the information paradox.
The paradox being that when something falls into a black hole, information seems to be destroyed, which violates quantum mechanics.
Exactly. But here, when information crosses the event horizon, its complexity becomes too great for the 4D sequential projection codex to sustain. The sequence halts.
The sequence just breaks down.
The information doesn't burn up. It simply stagnates and reverts back into the timeless, informationally saturated 5D ocean. By rejoining the source, information is preserved outside our causality. Black holes are the overflow valves for the 4D current.
That ties the whole system together. The sea flows in via dark energy, and the current resolves back into the sea via black holes. A complete hydraulic system.
It is a complete dynamic system.
If that flow is fundamental, it has to impact how we measure the universe. Which brings us to the tensions. First, the Hubble tension. Our local measurements of expansion are consistently faster than the rate we get from the early universe.
And with the hydraulic effect, the explanation is elegant. The expansion rate, h, is not a single universal constant. It's a local variable.
Because the inflow is strongest in the voids, and we happen to live near them.
Exactly. We live in a relatively low-density region. The hydraulic inflow is greatest in the great cosmic voids, causing those regions to expand 8 to 12% faster than denser regions. Our local measurements are skewed by being near these faster expanding voids, while the CMB reflects the true, slower early average. The tension is an expected feature.
So expansion is just inherently uneven. What about the S8 tension, the one about the smoothness of the late universe?
The standard bottom-up model predicts a clumpier universe than we actually see. Our universe appears slightly smoother than expected.
And the five-dimensional flow model fixes this with its top-down approach.
Precisely. The structure is seeded by geometric necessity, those initial defined gaps. This top-down cascade naturally produces a smoother, large-scale distribution of matter from the get-go. The observed smoothness aligns beautifully with a universe born from planned geometric imperfections, not random quantum fluctuations.
Okay, we've unified the dark sector, solved the beginning, and explained the cosmic tensions. But what about the really weird stuff? Quantum mechanics, how does that fit in?
The source material suggests all of quantum mechanics, the truly strange phenomena, are actually fundamental limitations. They arise from the projection codex translating infinite 5D information into our finite 4D experience. Think of them as coding compromises.
So the weirdness isn't inherent to matter, but to our perception of it. Okay, let's start with the uncertainty principle. You can't know both position and momentum at the same time.
That's described as the finite resolution constraint of the codex. The projection has a resolution limit, like a digital image. It simply cannot render conjugate properties perfectly at the same time. If you sharpen the focus on position, momentum gets blurry, and vice versa. It's a trade-off.
And entanglement. Einstein's spooky action at a distance. Two particles, light years apart, instantly connected.
Because their connection exists outside of 4D space and time, they share a common root in the 5D ocean. While their 4D manifestations are separated, their informational connection is at the source level. They're linked by a common origin in timelessness.
Which brings us to the biggest headache. Wave function collapse. The particle is everywhere at once until you look at it.
That is the codex's rule of logical non-contradiction. In the 5DC, the particle exists as all possibilities simultaneously. But for it to flow into our sequential 4D current, the codex has to enforce non-contradiction. A thing can't be both A and not A at the same time in a sequence. The measurement is the act of forcing the timeless potential to yield a single, definite reality for us.
That is a full-stack theory. It touches everything from the start of the universe to the smallest particles.
And that level of unification brings us back to the most critical requirement for any good theory. Falsifiability. It has to stick its neck out.
What is the boldest, most direct prediction, the one that could break this whole framework?
The boldest prediction is the void hydrogen floor, and this connects directly back to the hydraulic effect.
If S energy is continuously flowing into the cosmic voids to create dark energy, what happens to that S energy?
A portion of that constantly infusing S energy must condense into the simplest form of baryonic matter, pristine neutral hydrogen. This would create a faint, uniform bath of gas, specifically in the deepest, emptiest parts of the cosmos, the voids.
And what density are we talking about? We need a specific target to look for.
Yes, the predicted density is incredibly faint, but it's calculable, approximately 2 × 10 to the negative 7 atoms per cubic centimeter.
2 × 10 to the negative 7. That is the smoking gun. If we detect that faint, uniform floor of hydrogen in the voids, the model holds. If we look deep into the voids and find nothing, the framework collapses.
And the capability to test this is almost here. That signal is within reach of next-generation radio telescopes. The source specifically mentions the Square Kilometer Array, the SKA. The data coming in from the SKA in the next few years will be the ultimate judge of this 5D flow model.
So if we look back at our mission, we explored a single framework that replaces 4 massive concepts in cosmology with one coherent story.
Exactly. It replaces the hot Big Bang singularity with the cold start. It replaces cosmic inflation with top-down structure formation. It replaces exotic dark matter particles with projected gravity. And it replaces the cosmological constant with the measurable hydraulic effect.
That's immense unifying power. If the universe really is a current within a timeless sea, What's the final implication for us?
It implies a deeper order. The universe becomes a perpetually renewed system. It reinforces the impossibility of time travel since the arrow of time is defined by an immutable flow, and it points toward a future where we could unify all forces within a single 5D equation.
The ultimate takeaway for you, the learner, is that the universe may not be a closed, self-contained system that started with a bang. We might be a dynamic current flowing within an eternal ocean, just now learning to read the code of the sea from which we flow. The data from DAI, GWST, and the SKA are flowing in now. Will they reveal the projected reality? That's what we fate to find out.